we'll be listening, we'll be reading, and
We'll be answering.
And we'll be answering. Yeah. So it's just like, as long as there's constantly communication going on in this, I'm perfectly happy. You don't have to be happy in the community, and then all I can ask is just like, tell us why you're not happy, and we can see if there's something we can do for you.
Oh shit, here we go again.
Helldivers has had many ups and downs, which often are blamed on a couple of things. Balance, of course, the quality control problems, and the lack of content are the main ones. The player base has been fighting about all these constantly, but the lack of content really only comes up when time is taken to look at the other two. So I don't really care about that one. People just need to shut up and realize new content means nothing if you can't play and enjoy it. What I really want to look at is how this game has many mechanics, systems, and issues that hurt the player agency, and if you take away this agency too much, the game stops being fun. So you might wonder, what is player agency? I will put up a description on the screen, but simply said, I'm going to be talking about how we have a lot of things that take away player control, and how this issue in many ways has been obscured because we, the players, and Arrowhead have been focusing on the wrong things. There are so many ways the game takes control away from the player. Ragdolling, strategy and bouncing, helpful steering limits, unfinished enemies, and so much more. Even the way the Galactic War works these days all end up taking away control from us players. Before we worry about how strong or weak we should be, I really believe we need to set a standard for the player experience where we always feel that whatever happened was fair and we could have done something different to just change the outcome. My understanding is that Arrowhead wants Helldivers to be a difficult game, filled with silly moments that make you laugh and have it be memorable and fun. And they see something like the first time you go up against a Ball Titan, where you struggle to kill it, but when you do, it feels like a victory. These types of moments are the peak experiences they want to strive for in the game. In an effort to recreate these, and as the game gets older and people get better, more and more systems and changes have been made that take control away from the player, all in the hope it will assist in recreating these types of moments over and over for the player. As for what we as the actual players want, well, we mainly want to be in control of a character, so we can actually play the game and react to our surroundings. Most of us don't mind failing as long as we can actually see a way out. Just something where we can say, oh yeah, I should have dodged earlier or not reloaded. But as soon as something happens where we feel like we couldn't do anything because we had no control, it was all taken away. Some of you might wonder what I'm talking about. So let's set a couple of examples and just talk about all the stuff in this game that create these negative experiences. If you have been playing for a while, you might have noticed that enemies have random bursts of super accuracy. Like a conflagration devastator hitting you with all pellets from the shotgun from a mile away, or a machine gunner beaming you down without missing a single shot. All enemies with ranged attacks seem to have these moments, and these feel like the game is almost following a script, and your diver was the red shirt marked to die in this scene. On top of that, the game also often makes it near impossible to see beyond the barrel of your gun with smoke effects, fog, and other particles and whatever. I wouldn't even mind a lack of visibility if the enemies also were affected, but most of the time they aren't. Sometimes you don't even know what you're shooting back at until you are almost close enough that you could just give it a kiss on the lips. Now, on to one of my biggest gripes in the game. Stagger, interrupt, and ragdoll. Especially ragdoll. But even I have to admit that ragdolling does allow for some great moments to happen, and it is a core element of the Helldivers experience. Ragdoll is very easily triggered by all kinds of things, and it being a binary effect of you either are or aren't ragdolled, it sometimes just feels stupid and immersion breaking when you are slowly rolling down a hill or whatever, waiting just to be allowed to play again. Then there is the getting stuck in all kinds of terrain and objects, because your diver can fold and move in ways it normally can't while being ragdolled. When you do get stuck, that is usually the only escape, and whatever gear you had on you, well, that might be lost forever. There are also a bunch of animation issues that have come from this ragdolling, which wouldn't be much of a problem if the attempts at fixing them didn't make the overall experience worse as well. Take the worm diver bug, where your model slides over the ground as if you were lying down. Originally, when players recovered from a ragdoll, the game forced you to stand up. People got frustrated as they really wanted to be able to stim or just not get up. When we were given control, it revealed the worm diver bug, as I suspect the automatic standing up was originally implemented to stop the worm diver bug from happening. In the attempt since to fix the issue, a delay was added before you were given back control, as a sort of middle ground. You weren't getting up, but you also still didn't have control. But even after multiple tweaks to this delay, the bug is still there, and it still feels pretty bad when you are looking at your character not reacting to your input before he gets hit again by something and put back into the ragdoll state. Another layer is getting ragdolled while you are behind cover. Something that was fixed in the patches that came from the 60-day plan, but around the end of January or the beginning of February, the fix was reverted. We have many enemies that by design also generate a ton of ragdolling. Often this is used as a mechanic to force players to move from wherever they are. One of the worst offenders is the War Strider. Its grenade spam is made to flush people out of cover. And on the other hand, we also had the original Leviathan, which was made to force people to retreat and actually get in cover. In theory, these are good ideas, but the implementation, in combination with the way the systems currently work, make these some of the most hated enemies in the game, even before you start talking about the other problems they have. These and the other ragdoll machines require a serious amount of effort in the form of ammo or specific weapons just to take them out, but also often being overrepresented in the game, as they are wrongfully used as a difficulty slider. I don't have the perfect solution to fix ragdolling, but there's a bunch that could be done to improve how it feels. The obvious ones is allowing us to stim or shoot with an accuracy penalty. Hell, make it possible to cancel a stratagem by retyping the code if you dropped it. Give us something that gives a bit of control back while your character is rolling down a hill for 3 to 5 business days. It would make such a difference. Let's move on to how enemies and their attacks are able to pass through almost anything. First, let's look at how enemies can move through buildings, terrain and all the other things. This ability was introduced with Omens of Tyranny and the Illuminate faction. And I call this an ability because when we got the squids, we also got new map variants with the urban sections. Those small city sections on the normal maps. They have all kinds of structures, adding more height and locations where players actually needed to be for the POIs and objectives. And unlike with the rocks, Arrowhead couldn't just try and block the players from getting up there. For anyone that doesn't know, the limited helpbot steering, the bouncing stratagems, and even how we often can't climb things where you'd think you should be able to get on, easily even, all came after the game's release. This was to stop players from getting the high ground, giving us a tactical advantage, especially since enemies couldn't get up there themselves back then. Now that blocking us at all times from getting up on structures wasn't an option anymore, the devs had to find a new equalizer, and did this by giving enemies the ability to ignore walls and just move up or into structures, especially when the AI struggles to find a path to the player. But since they don't just teleport up to the player's height level, which I'm sure would create some other problems, they instead can just ignore terrain and move into it, and the AI will abuse it all the time. Because it doesn't know the difference. It's all valid, especially when it allows the enemies to hit the player. Whatever safeguards were put in place to stop this behavior have not been enough, and it's been an obvious problem since. With attacks that ragdoll the player through cover, and enemies that can just move through everything, you'd think that no one would be silly enough to also have the AI see through terrain and whatever, right? I'm sure you already know the answer to this, especially looking at what I already discussed. But before I go into this, I do need to address a commonly used and misguided excuse. The classic, but actually, enemies use sound and smell to detect you. Yes, I felt like I had to do that like that. Anyway, I decided to actually go back and find where this argument comes from. And it turns out it comes from something Johan Pilstead said in a video posted by Operator Drewski. Around a month after the game launched, Drewski played the game with Johan and Patrick Losata, who's also from Arrowhead. Early on in the conversation, it goes towards how enemies react to sound, like when something explodes and enemies just go over there and investigate. Johan continued explaining how vision and sound play important roles in how enemies detect players, and since it will be easiest, I will just show the clip.
It's just that everything just has to make sense. Like all of the enemies, they have hearing, sight. They also, some sense, have like an approximation of smell within a close radius.
Oh, smell. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like if you're in proximity of some of the units that are very like sensory aware, like the stalker, they will detect you no matter if they can see you.
From that, you can hear the doubt from Johan on how to actually explain the automatic detection radius. They, as in Arrowhead, simply chose to have enemies know where you are if you get too close. There is no realistic or immersive reasoning behind that specific mechanic, unlike sound and vision. In the past, this automatic detection range could be very aggressive. Intended or not, this was especially noticeable on the bot front, since they would just start blasting the walls and anything else that was between them and the player. And when people noticed, they let their feelings be known. Eventually, it was changed in part of the outcome from the 60-day plan. Sadly, like all good changes in this game, there will be a point they are undone. This year, we got two big changes to enemy AI. The first claimed that enemies would react faster and better, especially when they were in a group. The trade-off for this would be a small performance hit that turned out to not be that small. It also seems that smarter enemies means they can see through everything again. Shooting at walls, tracking and following players through multiple layers of terrain, sometimes across the map in the form of randomly getting blasted by a cannon. This happened so much that at some point even the bunker turret finally got a nerf. Past 100 meters it would not be as accurate anymore. Complaints about this thing have been ignored since it was made functional around escalation of freedom. So it's very thematic that something so hated finally got looked at because of another problem. There is more I could say here, but the point is, enemies can track players through basically anything, and it almost feels random when they do this due to how unpredictable the AI has gotten with the AI upgrade back in January and then the code optimization at the end of October, which seems to also have made the enemies derp out more again. These and other issues have been brought up many times. The way some of them were fixed by limiting the attacks with ammo depletion or interval timers, while at the same time making our arsenal stronger, which did make many of us happy because we got exactly what we asked for, turned out to just be a band-aid that didn't just hide the problems but made the game feel easy, because it was, especially in combination with the lowering of enemy spawns. You could just grab your biggest weapon and blast a handful of units that actually came your way. Now that the difficulty was out of whack, the devs also felt the need to add extra hidden downsides to all kinds of weapons, while also at the same time releasing unfinished or poorly worked out enemies and spamming them all over the place, replacing weaker units all for a theoretical difficulty increase. Because if you can't take the weapon you want to use, and the ones you can use are not as effective while the player also dies more often, you can call it more challenging, right? Or more difficult? Turns out, it just gets frustrating and annoying when you do die, because we are back to having no control. Despite this, players have kept playing the game through its ups and downs. Big part of that was the lower enemy numbers, meaning you could just work around these limitations by running away and waiting until everything was back off cooldown and blast them with that stuff. Now that we have a mission in the form of rapid acquisition where the map is small, enemy spawns are cranked up to levels we haven't seen since the Retrieve Essential Personnel missions, the truth becomes painfully obvious again. The game still has the same core problems it launched with, and instead of fixing these, we have been getting more and more systems and mechanics, adding and combating symptoms, but not solving any of the underlying issues. I've been yapping for way too long, so let me directly address this part at Arrowhead. Even if no one there sees it, I at least tried. All these massive ups and downs the game has are not needed at all. If you make the game feel fair to the player at all times, and when there are issues due to bugs and other things, show us you are not only listening but hearing what we're trying to tell you. Yes, the videos and blog posts are improvements, but the main thing it has been showing us is that the information the team seems to get is painfully one-sided, incomplete, and often even incorrect and or out of date. Why not make use of the propaganda commander program or something? The official Discord and Reddit represent not even a % of the vocal players out there, and every day more and more of them feel unwelcome in those places because they are told they do not have the correct opinion and attitude. Not that I'm saying that's the only place you guys get your information from. Time and time it is said that you don't want the player community to be toxic and divided, yet that is exactly what is being created, and no one is happy about it. Moving on to actual game related stuff. I made a list with a couple of gameplay elements that are the worst offenders of taking away player agency and enjoyment. Number 1. Ragdolling. Yes, it absolutely generates some great moments, which is why it absolutely also should stay in the game, but it needs work. Ragdolling takes away too much control, especially for how easily it is triggered right now. Ragdolling through cover just needs to be gone, fixed, again, like last year. The slow rolling in a ragdoll state for ages and getting chain ragdolled also needs to be capped or something. It would be great to not be fully helpless while you are in the ragdoll state. Why can't we stim or shoot with a penalty? Hell, when we get yeeted into a wall, why doesn't the diver actually try to protect their head? In real life, people try to protect themselves when they fall or whatever. Why not in game? Number 2. New content. Especially enemies need to be fully worked out and finished before they are released. This includes proper weak points, attacks, and overall they must feel fun and fair. Not just when there's one of them, but also when you have a dozen of them at a time with the rest of the enemies that spawn. And what about a couple of months down the line? It's easy to overlook all the problems until you get used to them. They are not new anymore, and then you suddenly just all you can see are the problem cases. I mean, like the War Strider. It was cool. I mean, it was also limited originally in the cities. But now, it's the most hated enemy right now. Even after it got changed, it still sucks. Number 3, difficulty. This one has many layers. The scaling through the difficulty levels is always breaking with new stuff. The first 5 barely teach players anything, making 6 the first real difficulty level, where players are forced to actually learn what they should and shouldn't do. 7 is the one where most end up at playing normally, for a challenge, and with 6 being this sort of fallback option. 8 has always been an in-between wildcard option people generally skip. Then difficulty 9 is for people who don't want to deal with the Mega Nest and Fortress stuff on 10. And 10, this is where things really go wrong for the core player base. It just breaks with the spam of heavy units and ragdolling, while at the same time still being easy. It just invalidates a bunch of weapons, and yeah, it's not a fun or a healthy way to scale the difficulty, really. If you ask someone that has been playing for a long time what they most enjoy fighting, will often be told the Predator strain on especially a Hunter seat. Why? It spawns tons of enemies you can shoot with basically anything you have in your arsenal. But if you make a mistake, you will often get just punished in a way that actually feels fair. We need difficulty that rewards skill and not be based around if you brought the right weapons, which generally boils down to explosives and anti-tank right now in the game. Take the War Strider. It currently on the bot front ruins all the fun and most of the loadouts if you want to bring anything that isn't explosive and AT. And even if I often end up bringing AT because I fear there's War Striders. Do I end up having fun? Not as much as when I could have brought what I wanted to bring and use. Yeah, it's an overall negative. Number 4. When ragdolling, enemy design and difficulty scaling are in a good place, I definitely think weapon balance can be solved. Not just looked at, solved. You can just look at what works and what doesn't work and why that is. In the past, people always flocked to specific weapons because the other ones often were just underpowered or not capable of doing what they needed to do. If all enemies have medium armor or higher even, and the weak points they have are so durable and inefficient to shoot, no one is going to try and hit those weak points unless they really have no other option. You shouldn't take that feedback as force players to actually shoot the weak points because they have no other options. Reward them for using them instead. The Hulk is one of the best examples in this game that rewards player skill, and personally, I think the Hulks are some of the best, if not the very best, designed unit in the game. Number 5. Can we please stop giving the AI cheats and other unfair advantages to use against players? If I can't see anything because of fog and smoke and whatever, why can they? Why are they allowed to move through terrain and objects almost all the time? Why can't they see through everything like the actual objects and terrain? Why do they have fake, random, guaranteed hits, both ranged and melee? At least pretend they are on an even ground with the player by not allowing them to do the absolutely immersion breaking and unfair feeling things. I get that there are technical limits to how you can do AI, but there's also limits what we as players can and will overlook until we just call it out for the bullshit it is and are done with it. Okay, that was my long-winded feedback for Arrowhead. Now on to us players. And since I really can't be bothered to pretend that I'm better than any of you out there, I'm just another opinionated asshole when it comes to Helldivers, because, I mean, I care about the game and in its future. So the best I can do is, let's try and stay constructive in our feedback, and whatever you do, don't get tempted to put on the pyrovision goggles. I hear they are very hard to remove once you are wearing them. Thanks for your time and have a good one.
Warning, you are in range of enemy artillery.
It's missing me. I balanced it perfectly.